Hi everyone, Natalie Dawson. Welcome to Leader Talk. This show is proudly brought to you by Brainiact. Each week, we are meeting with incredible leaders from around the world to discuss all things leadership and business insights. Each person coming on this show has given up their valuable time for one very clear purpose: to give back to small and medium business owners. There are leaders all around us, and not just from the business sector. Many of us will agree that these leaders make a huge difference to those they lead. Leader Talk is a show that brings leadership insights to small and medium-sized business owners from around the world, and today we're excited to explore leadership insights through the prism of elite sport. Today, my co-host, CEO of Pierlite, Arianto, and I are fortunate to chat to our guest speaker, Cannuli from the Western Sydney Wanderers. Catherine will be sharing her lessons on leadership, discipline, and teamwork from a life lived in a world of elite sport. Catherine will show you as a business owner how you can adopt some principles of success from elite sport, whether as an athlete, coach, or manager, and then apply these to business. Welcome to the show, Catherine.
Thank you, Natalie. It's a pleasure to be here.
Hello, Catherine. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Gus. Like I said, it's a pleasure to be here and spend this afternoon with you both.
Thanks, Catherine. Catherine, we begin each of these shows with two fun questions that we ask the guests, and we've prepared your two here. So we'd love to ask you, what was your first job?
My first job was actually at Workout World, which is a fitness equipment place. And it was basically, I'd never held a job before. So my parents had said, I think you should start to get some experience. And I applied for this job and I started working part-time.
Oh, that's fantastic. And the second question, simple one, Messi or Ronaldo?
I'd have to say Ronaldo, just because of how hard he's worked to become the athlete that he is today. I think if you look at what he's done and the way he's transformed his body, it's absolutely phenomenal.
Oh, fantastic.
Wow, I love that reason.
Yeah. And Catherine, before we go into some questions and have a discussion, just wanted to ask you if you can share your story with us. Tell us a bit about yourself, so everyone out there listening knows your story.
Yeah, look, I was just a young girl that was absolutely obsessed with football from a young age. I think growing up in an Italian household, I didn't have really much of a choice but to love football. That was the only sport that we watched in our house, and it was the only sport that we actually got out of the house to go and watch. Look, I come from an Italian background, so it was sort of, ingrained in us, and we would always get up at all hours of the morning to watch the Italian national team. And it was at the age of about 8 years old that I wanted to start to play football. And again, back in those days, over 20 years ago, speaking to my parents about wanting to play, and it was sort of frowned upon for young females to go and play football because there wasn't really any teams, any girls' teams. I'd have to go and play with the boys. And eventually one afternoon, my father was heavily involved at Marconi Football Club, and we snuck out of the house and I started training with the boys' team a couple of days a week. And I just started off with training, and I think people seen that there was something there with football and myself. And the following year, I was the first ever female to ever play in a Marconi boys team. So it was breaking barriers from a young age. I played there for a few years, and people always said that it was political that I was in the team, but the qualities of my football and that I had something was there, because I was a leading goal scorer for 3 years in an all boys team, which again was back in those days was really, really tough for a young female to sort of being in that environment, the only girl, and parents talking about you and why is she playing and my son's not playing. And playing at Marconi was the pinnacle of youth football back in those days. And I got to the age of 13, and the president of the association said that because I was a young female, I wasn't allowed to continue on and play with the boys, and they'd banned me from playing with the boys at the age of 13. They said it wouldn't be right that I'd be sharing a change room with boys, and back then it was very difficult. There was no just female only team. The only team that there was a senior women's team. So at the age of 13, I had to go and basically go into an all-age women's team. So I was playing against, ladies, 25, 30-year-old women at the age of 13, which was a massive jump, not only physically but also, mentally, to be a young 13-year-old girl playing with full-grown women. So I spent a few years at Marconi in the senior women's program, and then eventually transitioned into the New South Wales Institute of Sport program, which was an elite program for young females at the time that were recognised and discovered throughout the football competition. So from there, it was really where my journey really kicked off, and I went on to play for the junior Matildas. I went on to play for the actual Matildas as well. Played in the W League, so I'm a former W League player, a former Matilda now. But yeah, look, it was very difficult back in my day in terms of juggling, full-time work. Then I had to start to get into work and wanting to be a full-time athlete as well, which was quite difficult. And it was in 2014 where I decided that I was going to retire from the game because I just couldn't give it my all in terms of playing full-time and trying to keep a job and focus on my career outside of football, because unfortunately as a female footballer back then it was very difficult to make a wage, and I had to think about life after football and how I would get into buying a house and making ends meet and actually living. So yeah, look, I was one of the lucky ones that got to live out my dream. I played at the highest level in Australia, and I got to represent my country, which was fantastic. But I also went through some hiccups there at a younger age. At about 18, I decided to give the game away for a few years and wasn't enjoying it and didn't have that spark, in and around the game that I normally had. And fortunate enough that with some good people around me and getting that spark back again, I came back and actually got to get back into the W League now, which it's called the A-League Women's now. But prior to that, it wasn't called that. It was just a national summer league. But yeah, look, it's been a fantastic journey for me. I took a few years off after playing, and now I'm the head coach of the Western Sydney Wanderers, which for me, it's again it's the pinnacle of our sport, and to be a head coach at the highest level in Australia is a fantastic achievement for myself.
Wow, congratulations. I have a question on your story, if you don't mind, Nat, before we go through leadership questions. The two things that come up to me when you share your story, Catherine, at the young age, I don't know how to describe it, but I'm sure you will feel that you are unfairly treated because, even to the extent, there is a boys team, there's no girls team. And then on the age 18, you lose your spark, and then you just said, I don't want to do this anymore. You are surrounded by good people, and then you come back. You must have a lot of resilient capacity in your body to keep going, and now becoming the head coach of a very high level clubs. So tell me your journey from the resilient lens. How from a very young age you face a lot of adversity around your career?
Yeah, I think when I was in it, you don't realize. But now when I look back and think about what I went through from a young age, I think back and think, wow, I think that's what shaped me and actually made me the person that I am today as well. Because I find that, sometimes, me within, an environment, especially as a football coach, the environment is I'm always around a very male-dominated industry, and I find it very easy to connect with a lot of my male colleagues, and that could have been the reason behind me spending so much time with boys from a young age and playing with them and training with them and growing up around boys for a long period of time. But yeah, definitely making me resilient as a player, as a person, and now as a coach, because you're constantly competing for a position, and playing at the highest level in youth football. with boys, you always got to sort of, you got to sort of prove your existence there, because you're not just fighting for a spot, you're fighting for a spot as a female player against those boys as well. So that was always quite difficult. And, the negative comments from the sidelines, from parents, and, and from a young age, I'd always learned to block it out. And, my father would always say to me, let your football do the talking, so don't worry about what's being said on the sideline. Just let your football do the talking, because you earn the respect on the football field when you're scoring goals and when you're doing the great things on the football pitch. So my whole life I've sort of revolved around those words that, people, if they're talking about you, let them talk about you, because if they're talking about you, you're doing something right in my books. And I can keep delivering, whether it's, as a player or as a coach, because I think it's super important that, resilience is something that you need, not only as an athlete, but just as a person in general these days.
Fantastic. Catherine, I'm curious, I've seen your leadership style firsthand, and you were recently promoted from assistant coach to head coach. So I'd love to know, has your leadership style actually changed from going from assistant coach to head coach? Has it changed at all?
Look, I always said to myself, when I would get a head coach role, that I wouldn't change who I am. A lot of coaches go from assistant coaches and then they go to head coaches, and then they change, the person that they are. And for me, I'm a big believer in that. I've got to stay true to myself in terms of my values and what I want out of my team. So whether I'm an assistant coach or a head coach, my values and the way I treat my players and what I would do for my players is the exact same. Probably the only difference is that the decisions now are made by me. So that's going to be the toughest part of the job is, when it comes down to a Friday night and we're sitting there and we have to pick the team, I'm not just putting my opinion across anymore. I'm going to be the one that's actually going to be making those decisions. And then, what are the conversations that are going to be held with those players that, don't make the 16 man squad, or the players that are going to be on the bench on the weekend? What type of conversations am I going to be having with those players? Because it's super, super important for me as a leader and as a coach that, it's not just about the 16 players that make, the team sheet on the weekend, because at the end of the day, you don't know when you will have to call on one of those players that's from 16 to number 23, because, as a team sport, there's injuries, there's so many different circumstances that we might come across that, we need to make sure that all 23 players are always ready to be able to take that pitch and be able to give and provide us with, 150% effort, which I always talk about.
Catherine, do you mind to share with us what's your leadership values that you talk about that we can implement as a small, medium business leaders?
Yeah, I think, the first one that I always talk about is respect. We have to have respect for each other, respect for one another. And we need to make sure that every time we take the pitch, we're taking it with a great attitude, because in football, we talk a lot about tactics, so I can sit there and I can work on tactics for, 2, 3, 4 hours a week. But if the girls don't turn up on the weekend or during the week and don't have the right attitude and not willing to give me that 150% effort, then all the tactics and everything that we'd worked on and the strategies that we've worked on throughout the week would actually go out the window. And when we talk about attitude, it's, if we relate it back to football, we talk about if you lose the ball, what are your reactions? Do you just put your hands on your heads and you sort of let yourself down? Or are you up within 1 second and trying to win that ball back? So we want to see players doing things with attitude, with intent. So I can see that, they might not get back there to win that ball, but at least I know that they tried their hardest to want to get back there and do it. And that for me means so much more than a player that just stops and just walks and just gives up.
Oh, I can go on and on around that topic. I think your message is just absolutely outstanding around that, Catherine.
I think it's important, Gus, as well, because if you relate this to a business side of things, it's like your employees, they won't always get it right? So, but if they come in and they're asking for help, or you see that they're trying to do something, at least that's better than them sitting behind their desk and sort of waiting for you or somebody to go up to them and say, hey, why don't you try this? So it's a sort of a similar scenario.
Yes.
Yeah. Catherine, you mentioned previously about, now you have to make these tough decisions. And obviously, there will be consequences with some decisions. How do you deal with that? Like, obviously you'll make a decision. It could go in your favor, but it could also go the complete opposite. As a leader, how do you actually overcome that? Because I make mistakes and, I ponder on them for quite some time. It's sometimes hard to just stop and, move on. So how do you do that as a head coach?
Yeah, look, I think it's a really, really difficult one. And whether I'm making the right decision or not, only time will tell, because you won't know until, we come to the game and, when you're analysing, post-game and you're going through the reviews and everything. So for us, as a leader and as a head coach in an elite space, I would always say to the girls, look, this is a decision that I have made, which I have to live and die by. Okay, whether it's the right one or wrong one, time will only tell. But they need to have enough respect for us as leaders to accept that decision. We can talk about reasons of why they haven't made that the team, and we can say, okay, this is the reason why you didn't make it today, whether it's a tactical reason, whether it's, a fitness reason, whether it's, a technical thing that they, can't compete on that pitch with. So there's a lot of different reasons. And what I find, especially in the female space, is a lot of the girls want to know why they didn't make the team or why they're on the bench. And I think that's important for a leader and as a coach to be able to find the time to actually sit down and have that chat with them. So with me, in terms of the way that we deliver our team, so we will say who our 16 is that will be travelling or who will be coming to the game. I don't normally tell them straight away. So if there's girls that I know that are going to be left out of the squad, what I'll do is I'll speak to them previous to go into training that morning or going onto the pitch. So when the actual team does come out, that I've already spoken to those girls that aren't in the squad one-on-one.
Yeah. Catherine, can I also ask on that? When you mentioned that, when you don't select a key players, they tend to ask why. In business, it's similar. When we promote someone, there is other people don't get it, they ask why. And then after a while, I see a trend of people that never get it, and then after a certain period of time, they jump so high because they're not focusing on why they never get it. They keep improving. So now, if you have to give the characteristic of a successful player that throughout their journey, I'm sure not many players just having it easy, like every time get picked, every time get praised, every time get the great club. Am I correct to say most elite players will face a lot of challenges, disappointments, and then when you look back, you see the similar characteristic around acceptance and focus on improvement? Am I right on that?
Yeah, for sure. I've got this saying that I always say, it's hard work beats talent, because you can be talented at something, but if you don't want to work hard for it, it'll be very difficult for you to continue on. And, you'll see different people have different pathways, and some people will have that easy road to the top where they're constantly being picked for, state teams and national teams. Or in the business world, we can relate that to, always getting that promotion, always being that person that's always getting promoted. And then you get to the person that, gets left out of state teams or gets left out of national teams or is not getting promoted in the business world. And, it sort of gives you that fire in your belly to want to work harder and want to, find ways and find solutions of how can I better myself? How can I improve? What can I do to reach the top? And sometimes what I find, obviously being involved in football from, grassroots level all the way through to the professional side of things, is that you will see that different people that have had the easy run in the beginning, they will get to a point where they sort of stop and they plateau. And then what you'll see is the other ones will actually start to come through and they start to overtake. And sometimes you'll find, an athlete that around 17, 18, you're thinking, wow, this kid's going to play for Australia, or 15, 16, they're going to play for Australia. They've got the traits, they've got this, they've got that. And all of a sudden, the kid that was a little bit more behind is working so hard. And the one that we think that's got the talent and everything sort of stops working hard because they're sort of there or thereabouts. And then you just see those other kids start to overtake. And I think the most important message from that is, no matter what your talents are and no matter how good you are, in no matter what field you are, whether you're an athlete, whether you're a business owner, whether you're a coach, never forget that the learning never stops and that you need to continue to keep practicing your trade and making sure that you're getting better and you're evolving with what's going on, and that you don't stop practicing and you keep working hard, because once you stop, there's always someone there behind you or beside you that wants to work better and that does want to overtake you.
Yeah. And Catherine, you mentioned previously the importance of feedback in helping people grow. As a coach, how hard is it to strike that balance between actually pushing people to grow and then not actually being too critically hard on them to actually crush them? Like, how do you strike that balance?
I think first and foremost, you need to build the relationship with the person, so once you have a relationship with the person, then you can think about how you're going to approach it. So if I don't have a good relationship with a player yet, then I probably won't blast them on the field straight away, but if I know my relationship with that player, that I've got a great relationship with them, so I know that, I can maybe be a little bit harder with her on the pitch, then I know that when we come off the pitch, I can say, hey, Nat, I know I was a bit tough on you today, but, I'm only doing this because I want you to be better. But I know what that player is like, on and off the field, because I know that I can speak to her like that, in a way that I can push her and that I can, try and get a little bit more out of her. But I think the most important thing is knowing your players and knowing each and every one of them, because they're all different. So you need to be really understanding in that space, because, if you've got a player that, doesn't like to be, pushed, especially in a group environment, she might be one that you might need to pull aside after training and maybe do, some video review, and where you can show them where they've gone wrong. So it's an understanding of what your player needs and what they want, but also how are you nurturing them? How can you get the best out of them? Because each and every player is completely different. And it's your job as a leader and as a head coach to know each individual. And, in Australia, we call them coaches, but overseas, we call them managers, so a head coach is called a manager because their job is to manage every little bit of the team. And that's the reason why is to be able to get the best out of, our players and know what makes them tick and understand how to get the best out of them, which will then, if you get the best out of them individually, then as a unit, collectively, we're going to be a lot more successful.
I have a simple question for you that I think a lot of people think they know, but I think it's actually more complex than this question. You mentioned that knowing your players, equally knowing your team in your organization is key, because then you know how to treat them well and how to push them to the right direction. Can you give us some strategy of how do you know your team? How do you, like, knowing your team, everyone understand how to know someone because we engage it, but I see many leaders fail in doing this simple stuff. Now, if I'm an owner of a Kebab Shop. Sorry, Nat, I'm coming back as a Kebab Shop today, being 3:30 in the afternoon, talking to a elite
Hungry always.
athlete. I need to eat right now. If I'm an owner of a Kebab Shop and I have 3 people working for me, is it any simple strategy so I can engage well, know my team well, from your experience as a coach?
100%. I think sometimes even just picking up the phone. When I got this job and once I signed all my players, I made sure that I, met with each player individually. Normally I would do that at a cafe over a coffee, but this year was a little bit different. So we caught up over Zoom, and it was just an informal chat just to, talk about, what do they do for work, family, what's their lifestyle like, just general chit chat around, what they like, what are their interests, and just having that conversation just to show, once you show somebody that you care and you're going to give them the time of the day and want to know about their life and what they do and how they do things, I think that's how you get people to go above and beyond for you. So whether it's an athlete or an employee, I think you want to get the best out of them, and to get the best out of them, once you show them that you care and that you actually want the best for them, employees, athletes, whoever it may be, when you ask them for something, if you need them to stay back and do an extra shift, or you need them to stay back because you guys need to meet a deadline, that employee or that athlete's going to go the extra mile for you because they know that you genuinely care about them.
Isn't it interesting, Nat, when we listen to Catherine mentioning this? Not long ago, we interviewed Max Garcia, Sergeant Major from U.S. Marine, and he said, know your team, understand them, engage with them. So this is 2 different. One is elite athlete coach. One is veterans in the very elite army. The message is the same, and yet many leaders think that engage is as simple as taking everyone to a pub. Yet what Catherine mentioned, there's nothing about let's go out to a pub. We're talking about call them, understand them, talk to them. Isn't it interesting how simple it is, yet not many doing it consistently? That's my view. The importance of this is so important.
It's very important as well for myself as a head coach, and I probably forgot to mention as well, it's just not my players, it's my staff as well. So my staff need to be well looked after as well. So the way I look after my players is the same way that I look after my staff. I make sure that I know about them, I know what's going on in their lives. Not to sound like a busybody or anything, but to understand them and know what they're going through, because I'm only as good as the person beside me, and my staff is part of my journey, and my staff is so important to what I'm doing, because they need to have the belief in me, and they also need to be rowing the boat in the same direction as what I want to be rowing in, because as a collective, they're my backbone. So if my staff isn't well looked after, and my staff is also not in a great place, so it's very, very important that as a collective, players, staff are all felt well respected and well looked after.
Yeah. And, I can just imagine there's business owners out there listening right now, and they're thinking, but I don't have time to call my staff, or I'm busy with this, I'm already short of time. It sounds like, Catherine, what you're saying is, if you don't make the time for your staff or your people or your players or whoever it is, you will eventually they will leave, like they will crumble. Is that how you see it?
100%, because you need to make time for that stuff. And if you from a business perspective, if you can't make time as a business owner, put somebody in that position that can, because by investing in that person to actually make sure that your well-being and your culture is being looked after, I think is a super, super important part of people's businesses. So if you look to other businesses and why are they successful, I guarantee that it's got a trait of a great team and a great leadership team there that are actually push in that same direction, and making sure that, you know, all the employees are being looked after. And, you know, in the business side of things as well, and I am a big believer in this with my teams. It's, you know, organizing, you know, a team bonding, whether it's, you know, going out for a dinner or a lunch, and the same thing applies to business owners, you know, taking out, you know, staff members to a lunch, you know, packing up the office, say, guys, today we're finishing up early, we're going to the local cafe and we're going to have lunch, and, you know, work's going to put it on. And, you know, people grow, you know, they grow a meter taller because, you know, they feel well respected and well looked after. And again, I always go back to it, when you need something from that person, they're going to go the extra mile for you because you are respecting them, you are saying that you value them. And when someone feels valued, they will go the extra mile.
Catherine, how do you learn all this? You're very insightful. You're very insightful. A lot of things that you mention as a leader, very applicable in the business world. And one thing that I found, transforming a business is not a textbook thing. Transforming a team, I'm sure it's not a textbook. You know, this little thing, you know, I love the things that you mentioned. Take them to lunch, make them happy so they grow. Because I always say to my team as well, you know, especially my leadership team, I said, you can't get much from a beaten dog. You literally cannot get much from a beaten dog.
Yeah.
And how do you make dog happy to learn? Well, you don't beat them, right? And
you reward them. You get the treats out to reward them.
Reward them. So how do you learn all this? Is it based on your experience? I'm just interested to know, how do leaders learn so much insight that you share with us?
Yeah, I kind of was going to even kind of go and ask, is there some football leader out there that you look up to? Is there someone where you're getting this because it's really insightful. Everything you say, we can all relate to.
Yeah, I think, look, I'll be honest, I've not had any, you know, coaching or anything in this. I've just always been a leader. I've just always had those natural abilities to bring people together. I don't know if it's the way I was brought up or the experience that I've had as a professional footballer. And I'm sure that everything from such a young age and my upbringing and, you know, my footballing life and what I went through, and, you know, maybe being, you know, thrown into an older environment from a young age made me grow up really quickly. Probably a lot of that has a lot to do with the person that I am today. You know, it's made me mature and grow up very, very quickly. But a lot of these things just come very natural to me. I've always just been a believer of an inclusive environment, and you know, always my home is always open for people. You know, I'm always someone that, you know, loves to bring people into my home, and just a loving person. That's just the way I've been brought up, and I think a lot of the experiences would have to say that, yeah, being involved in older environments from a young age, I think, has probably got a lot to do with it. Probably one of the leaders that I do sort of you know, look up to and see a lot of is Alex Ferguson, who was a very, very successful manager for Manchester United, and I've read all of his books. But, you know, basically he was the man that brought the team together. I have an understanding of him. You know, a lot of the players that still to this day, you know, still look up to him and see him as a father figure to a lot of those, you know, young boys that came through that Manchester United 1999 team that, you know, he had nurtured for such a long time. But, you know, a fantastic leader that's so well respected, and no matter where he goes in the football world, everyone knows, you know, of him, and still just so respected and loved in the footballing world, whether you're a Manchester United fan or not.
Yeah. Just speaking about that, Catherine, in the business world, we're talking about strengths now. In the business world, we're actually told to focus on people's strength. How true is this in the world of sport, specifically football? You know, do you focus on people's strengths as well there?
Yeah, for sure. But you got to focus on their weaknesses as also. Especially depending on where or when you get the player in. Depending on what age. So if they come in at an older age, and it might be a little bit hard to sort of change their technique, for instance, in the way they strike a ball. If they come in a lot, in the older ages, we might say, well, this might be something that we can't rectify, we can't change their technique, but you know what, we might be able to work with them in this aspect, which will still make them a better footballer. I think it's important to, yes, work on their strengths, but I think it's even more important to work on their weaknesses, because when a person sees that they're improving in something that they're not so good at, that also brings confidence, which is, it's another tool for them to actually be able to use. And I use this saying a lot with, especially with my younger players. I will give you the tools, but it's up to you to understand which tool to use at what time. Yeah. So that for me is super important, and giving the player the confidence to have many different tools to be able to use in whatever the decision is at the time.
Yeah, Catherine, when we talk about, I'm in business. I'm, I thought when I was young, I will become a tennis player, a very good one. Obviously not in Australia. So when I say good, where I come from in Indonesia, that good is probably even average in here. But, when we talk about sports, business world, benchmark sports in many instances, right? We talk about teamwork. We always look at, hey, we need to be like a team sports. But maybe we don't understand what the description of teamwork, even though we relate it to a sports, because the understanding of sports is as far as we're watching it on channel 7 or maybe 9, 10. We're not connected to any channel, but how do you describe a good team and a teamwork, like from the lens of a very elite sports? What is a team? What is a good team? What is a teamwork? Like, just the description itself, I'm interested to know from you.
I think the most important part about teamwork is, for me, is buy-in. So you need to make them buy into what you want to achieve. So if the players are buying into what the head coach is trying to achieve, so at our level, we want to win a championship, and to do that, we need to do X, Y, Z on the training pitch. So each player needs to buy into what we're wanting to do. If you have a player that's on the pitch, and there's 90% of them saying, yeah, we're going to do that 30-minute run, and we're going to run for the whole time, and then you've got 1 or 2 players that are saying, oh, nah, stuff this, I don't want to do this run, I can't be bothered for this. Well, then it's about, how do you get those 2 to buy in to the rest? Because if you've got those 2 over here already saying negative things, they're going to bring down the rest of the team. So it's about getting the buy-in from the players to make that team environment. And it's the buy-in, whether it's on the pitch or off the pitch. So for instance, in a football world, for me as the coach, I don't know what goes on inside the change rooms. What are they talking about? Are the girls all getting along? And I always say this: you will not be best friends with every single one of your players or your colleagues, because at the end of the day, you've got different interests, you've got different, friendship groups. But the main thing is that when you come here, that we all come together for the same goal. And that goal is to go on the pitch, work very, very hard, because your reward is going to be match day. Because match day, when we win together, and that for me is the most important part. What they go and do in their everyday life, and when they're not with us, they can do whatever they want. But you're not always going to be best friends with your team. You're not going to be on the phone to them every day, or hanging out with them every day. But collectively, when you come here, we all have the same goal, and this is what we want to achieve. And that's the most important part for me in a team environment.
And I'm as a kebab shop, I got one staff, Natalie. Right? How do I make her join my goal and really believe in my goal. Like, I wake up 3 o'clock every morning. I want to make the best kebab every day. And Natalie come at 8 o'clock in the morning, working for me. How do I make Natalie really bind to my goal to be the best kebab shop in Melbourne?
Well, first,
You
Gus,
bad, Gus.
I'm going to be going for a kebab after this chat, because you're making me want a kebab. I hope none of my players are listening, because kebabs are definitely not good for you. But look, I think when you see that there's one that's sort of not pulling in the same direction, I think that as a leader we have to recognize that. And sometimes you need to do more with them individually, whether it's a one-on-one chat, whether it's a few more phone calls than what you normally have to do to your other employees or your other athletes that are on board, and find out why are they not invited, like why are they not interested, why are they not engaging, what's going on, and how can we help them to actually buy in and get up to speed with what we want to achieve, because sometimes we don't know what's going on in their personal lives, and we don't know, where they're at, are they not feeling included? Do they feel like they're not part of the team? There's got to be a reason why that person doesn't feel included. And I think it's our job as leaders to find out the reason why, and then see. And then you can reassess, in a couple of weeks' time, and change your strategy in the way you're talking to them, or the way, you're delivering your message. And then you can see if there's any changes. And if there's not, again, then you try a different way, and keep trying different ways to try and bring that person up to speed with everybody else.
Yeah. Well, Natalie, I call you tomorrow on one-on-one.
Yes. Yeah, we'll have our chat about my
yes.
performing at the kebab shop. Do you know what, Catherine? When I watch football games, I often think about, we see teams out there, and sometimes they're losing by quite a substantial amount, or they're not playing as what you'd expect. And then halftime kicks in, you go off, you do whatever the coach does and all that secret stuff, and you haven't got much time to actually speak to them. How important is it as a coach? You've got, I don't know how long you've got, 5 minutes, 10 minutes to actually turn them around. I've always been curious to know that, because I've seen teams, they've played terrible first half. Their coach has said something to them, and they come back out and it's a brand new team playing. So how do you manage that as a coach? It looks difficult, because Gus and I can tell you, we sit through lots of meetings and we have an hour or an hour and a half to get our messages across. And yet you've got 5-10 minutes to do this?
We have 5 minutes between breaks on our kebab shop to make sure that during lunchtime we hit it hard, Nat.
Okay, those ones. Yes, those are the 5-minute ones.
Exactly. Now, look, in a professional environment, we have generally 15 minutes for half time. And out of that 15 minutes, I would probably talk for a maximum of 5 minutes, if that. I always make sure that my messages are clear. Myself personally, I always stick to 3 points. I won't say more than 3 points to the team of things that we want to change. And depending on where we're at, in that game, will be depending on what, my last words are to them. For instance, if we're coming to break and we're losing 2-0, my last words might be to them, well, you're losing 2-0. They've scored 2 goals in one half. Why can't we go out there now and score 3 goals and win this game? So if they can do it, why can't we? So I think it's important that the message that you're putting onto your players, it's a clear message. It's something that they can have belief in, and they need to believe in your message. They need to have belief in you, that your 3 points in what you've said are what they believe in. Because if they don't believe in what you're saying, it's very, very hard for them to go on the field and actually execute what you've said. So the team has to have belief in their leader, which I think is super, super important. But I also find that half time, the messages need to be clear, and you don't want to be, overloading them with, 10, 20 different messages, because, what's going to be sticking there for them to go out in that second half? Because if you overload them, then they're not going to take anything from them. So if you only keep for myself, 3 key points that I would be focused on. If I feel like other things need to be addressed individually, that's when I would use the rest of my staff, whether it be my assistant coaches, to go and speak to an individual player one-on-one and see if they can rectify a certain problem that we've identified within the game. But other than that, the message just needs to be clear, and the motivational piece at the end needs to be something that those players actually believe that they can do.
Yeah. Catherine, I have a question, right? So as a coach, you must, maybe must is wrong. I never been a coach, but just assume it's happened in business. In business, often we know as a leader that our season, say we are running on a financial calendar, we know that we will not hit our budget. We know, because it's 3 months to go and we just lose. In the game, I'm sure during halftime, there is a time where it's not 2-0, it's 5-0. And in the elites football, to have another halftime to actually hit it when you already lose 5, it's kind of impossible in your mind. Maybe nothing impossible, but just assume it's impossible. I'm not asking about what you say to them. What I want to know is, what do you say to yourself to stay motivated, even when you as a leader with your expertise know that we are losing here? But because that's what we face as a small business owners, medium business owners. Throughout the COVID, they know they face a lot of challenges, and they staff. So I got Natalie know that my kebab shop only have 2 people coming every day, not 200 anymore. But I need to make sure that she stay with me. Is there any strategy how to motivate even when the situation is losing?
100%. I think it's important, and I've had this in previous teams, that whether you're losing or winning, that you need to keep working at the same intensity and the same work rate. So don't start with bad habits, because just because you're losing 5-0, it doesn't mean that that's an excuse now for you to start picking up bad habits, because the next game's going to come, and you know what? The score starts at 0-0 again. So if you take those bad habits, into that game of 5-0 just because you've lost that game, and you start thinking that the bad habits are okay, then when we come to the next match, you're going to think that those habits are fine to take in. So for me, it's very, very important that we keep true to ourselves. We keep playing in a football way. I always talk about, you keep playing your style of football. So you keep playing the way that you want to play. You keep sticking to our game plan and what we've said, and that still stays the same, because you might lose this game, but you might win the next 10 in a row because of you sticking to your values and you sticking to your good habits. But if you think that you can just throw the towel in just because you've lost one game 5-0, that's not the mentality of the players that I want to be coaching. I want to be coaching players that, can bounce back, because unfortunately in football and in life, you're not always going to have the wins, because it's easy to coach a team that's always winning. It's the team, it's the ones that you can coach that when you got the losses, because bad things are going to happen in life, whether it's in sport, in life, in business. But it's about what type of resilience do you have as a person to be able to bounce back and to keep true to yourself, to be able to keep your values high and keep your environment in the best possible way, because you can't drop your game. You can't drop your guard just because of one, bad game. I think it's super, super important that, we stick to the game plan and we stick to what we want to achieve, because eventually you'll get back to winning. But if you accept losing and you accept that, then losing them will just become a habit.
Thank you.
Really inspirational, Catherine.
Yes.
Yeah. I was just thinking, Catherine, in football, if we had a team of all strikers or all defenders, obviously the team would not be balanced. Same as in business, we recruit people based on, we want a team that can do lots of things based on different skills. How important is this skill set in a team in the world of football? And how would it relate? How can that kind of relate to business? Is it important to have a team? Because, if we had everyone as a striker in a football team, it wouldn't work as cohesively and as a great team. So how important is skill set?
Yeah, it's huge, and obviously, again, I speak about my experiences, as a coach across from grassroots through to the professional stage, and you'll see it at the younger ages. Every kid wants to be a striker because every kid wants to score goals and every kid wants to be the hero, or you got mum and dad saying that they're going to give them $50 per goal, so they all want to be strikers. So it's very, very important that, especially in an elite environment, that you have a good balance of players, whether it's, your strikers, your midfielders, your defenders, where it's positional, but also you need to have the good balance of, your experienced players, but also your younger players that are coming through. Because for me, it's a very, very important one to make sure that we have a good balance of players within our team, and we've got younger kids coming through that can actually see those older experienced players, because they can actually learn and take from their experiences on and off the pitch, because you can see, an experienced player knows, for instance, how to prepare themselves for a preseason. They know that coming into preseason that their training needs to be at a certain level come day one, where, more inexperienced player might think, oh, you know what, I don't really need to do those extra runs in preseason because we're going to start in a couple of weeks, where the experienced players know what is needed come day one and what is needed to manage their bodies throughout the season. So for me, in my team, especially right now, I have a good core of experienced players, but I've also got a good balance of younger players, because I think it's very important that we're not just planning just for the now. We've always got to plan for the future, and it's a succession plan of turning the wheel, because as one older player starts to retire or is coming towards the back end of their careers, that we make sure that if someone does leave, we've got somebody to fill their shoes straight away, which is super, super important for me, to keep a good dynamic across the whole team.
So Catherine, if I relate that to a business, so you have a striker, business got salespeople. They're the one who always hold the trophy at the end of the year, how many goals, how many sales. But then we have the unsung heroes, the defender, the people in operation, that is actually the more salespeople sell, the harder they work, right? Do you rotate them? How do you make the unsung heroes feel as important? Because if everyone want to be a striker, then football team will lose because there's no one defending. But in the reality of life, where the striker, the salespeople, this arena of the one who kicking the goal get more glory in the external outlook, how do you balance that in the team so people still want to do the rest of the job that is important for the team, right? How do you
I think
manage
that comes down to the leader, right? And the leader needs to make sure that person is being rewarded in other ways, making them feel part of the goal achievement. So if that person is achieving all these goals, making them feel valued, rewarded, make them feel good about what they're doing. For us, in a football perspective, where it's, again, like you said, the striker's scoring the goals, but the striker can't score the goals if the midfields aren't doing the hard work and playing them the ball. So making sure that you are rewarding those people that are doing the hard work underneath, and because every team is always built on its foundations, and without that foundation of people doing the job, then for me the roof doesn't stay on. You could say it in that way. So I think it's super, super important that, again, as a leader, you need to recognize that those people are doing the hard work, are doing the tough stuff for the team, and that we are rewarding them and making sure that, sometimes it's just, again, a phone call or, a pat on the back saying, hey, I know that, John only achieved his budgets this year, and he only got what he's achieved because of what you've done in the background. And sometimes not even about, a money reward. It's about the boss actually pulling them into the office and saying, I know that John would never have reached his KPIs this year because without you working in the background, and don't worry, you'll be rewarded for your efforts or whatever it may be.
Yeah. Look, I know we're almost out of time, Catherine, but I have to ask you this about data, because I was looking yesterday evening about on the website whoscored.com, and football is becoming this increasingly data-driven sport, and it's amazing how much is being captured with these athletes, aggression, speed, etc., even with the GPS player trackers and things like that. What lessons can business owners actually take away from that? The fact that so much data is being collated even in sport.
I think data can be great, but it can also be very, very bad, because, you can look at data on a piece of paper and it can look like, people are in, oh, wow, this person's doing so fantastic because their data shows that they're doing fantastic. But you don't see the behind the scenes stuff of what goes on. And I'll leave you guys on this. Our players report to us a daily schedule. It's a wellness plan where we know how many hours they're sleeping, what type of sleep quality they've had, do they have, any soreness within their bodies? Do they have, cold and flu symptoms and so on? There's a series of things that they report. And I get that report every morning. And if I just go purely just based on that report, it's only showing me what they've inputted. But I think it's super, super important that myself as a head coach, if I see that something's sparked or that's something that's come up and it's flagged, I don't just purely just go off that data and off that report, that I find the time to speak to that player and I say, hey, you only slept 5 hours last night. Is everything okay? Like, what's going on? Is everything all right? And when you have that conversation, then you start to get into a little bit more of why they only slept that 5 hours, or, where you can just look and say, oh, Kelly only slept 5 hours. Oh, why is she only having 5 hours of sleep? You can start speculating certain things, but you don't know really what the reason why is that she didn't sleep those 5 hours, So for me, data can be great, and I think it's awesome, especially that we're touching on a lot of this. There's so many different programs and resources, but I still believe in the human touch of having that conversation and getting a feel for, how they're feeling or why something's come up. And I'm a big believer, and some people might say that I'm a little bit old school around that, but a conversation is always, held a lot more than me looking at a piece of paper and telling me, what they feel and how they feel today.
Brilliant. Look, Gus, I'm going to hand it over to you. You like to do your wrap up at the end of each leader talk. So
thank you.
You've got a lot to wrap up.
Yeah, thank you. Catherine, I just want to say you are our first elite coach from a sports leadership that we have in our leader talk. And if we not have a exact time that bind this conversation, I can stay here for 5 hours because you are so insightful. So let me share back what I like from what you mentioned, from the lens now of a leader myself in an organization. Let the football do the talking. Let's results speak. I think that's very powerful because in sports or in business, there's people sitting in the grandstand, on the grandstand, will tell you everything, but they can't even kick the ball. And the internal strength of keep going and let this result or the football do the talking is important. Keep your values, respect, and have the right attitude. I just love that. Hard works beat talent. Learning never stops. And I think in today's world, if someone said that I'm the best today when the world are moving so fast, whether it's sports, business, or just general life, we will fail because my son knows technology better than me now. So I think we need to keep learning. I'm only as good as people around me. Okay, I understand that. I think a lot of people will agree, but I like your second statement. So let me repeat. I'm only as good as people around me, so I need to look after them. Catherine, congratulations as a coach, as a leader. Every statement you put is always followed by your responsibility to look after your team, your staff, and the people around you. I think that is a quality. Then I ask, what happens if we're losing? Which is, in life, we don't win every day. Well, don't start with bad habits, even when you are losing. Keep it up. Keep true to ourselves. Keep the game plan. Stick to the good habit and your values, and you will win. Catherine, thank you so much for your time. I really learned a lot myself. Thank you so much for donating your time for our leader talk. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. It's been great to chat with you this afternoon.
Thank you, Catherine. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. For more information on Leader Talk or for some great resources to help your business grow, check out brainiact.com.au. Thanks, everyone. Bye.